the use of resources for the welfare of the general population. You know, to implement a strong government, you continuously need renewal within the government. You know, like there are always the opportunists, and you have to have a team specialized in shedding the lethargic figures that are usually very opportunistic and create division. And then there is another thing that I'm thinking about. When you talk about this world situation that is creating so much hatred against the West, you have like still now all the people that have suffered from colonialism, they do not recognize themselves in any Marxism or communism because they feel that that is a white people invention and they reject it automatically. And they, you know...
the question about the terminology,
yeah.
I don't think is a decisive question, but let me come back to the first point you made.
Yes.
And then I'll get on to the next one.
Strong government.
The first point was about how people learn to administer and participate.
Yes.
In normal times, we've lived in what would consider to be decades of normal times, people do not control any major aspect of their lives. In fact, even the right to vote for many people is something that they've considered, well, does it really matter? Maybe I live in a constituency where there's a solid majority for another party. Does it make any difference if I vote or not? So there's been an attitude that the bosses rule, I try and get on myself, maybe I can run a little business, maybe I can buy a house, maybe somehow I can do okay, but I have no real control over any major aspects of decision making affecting my life. That's how the world is in Britain. When they say democracy, they mean crossing a piece of paper every few years to elect someone to a council or to government, and most people don't really trust those who they've elected. Now, how do you shift the balance away from that powerlessness that people feel towards a position where people feel empowered to control some aspects of their lives? Now, there are many different levels at which this works. We're not asking everybody to participate daily in elections or democracy. We're asking people to get engaged where it is in their interest to do so. In other words, all parents, or most parents, have an interest and have the time to take some care over what happens in the schools. All students have an interest in participating in gaining some control over the way that the universities or further education colleges are administered where they study. All workers have an interest in exercising some control over the way that the workplaces are administered. You know what it's like. You work in a workplace with 10 or 20 people. Someone is unjustly picked on by the employer, perhaps unjustly sanctioned or sacked by the employer. Everyone feels a certain amount of guilt that they didn't stand up about that issue. Now we will shift the balance and give the workers power. Power to be able to veto decisions like that, to challenge decisions like that, without being threatened by being sacked or victimised. The same in housing. In housing, if you only get a 6-month contract, you're permanently in fear that the landlord can take some sanctions against you. They might kick you out because they want to get more rent. They might harass you because of one ground or another. And therefore we are saying rental contracts should be at least 3 years, and we should guarantee that tenants have rights as tenants to exercise some control and be able to respond to impositions or dictates or mistreatment by landlords, which can include having rats in the house, or not being clean, or having a mould on the walls, or not fixing the taps, or not fixing the toilets. And believe you me, this is standard practice amongst large numbers of parasitic landlords in Britain. That's not to say all landlords are parasites, but we do have to control these questions. Otherwise, we begin to drive down the conditions of people's housing, worsening their personal, physical and mental health. And then we all pay for that when people end up in mental hospitals. Sorry? Who is it? Well, then we must empower people to control their councillors and to democratically administer.
The lack of property, that's why they're keeping
Lack of what? I mean, let me point out to you, when I walked up here, I walked past the Grosvenor Hotel, which is about down where that next bus is here, and I walked up on the other side of the street up to here. Number 93, Park Lane, empty. It's been empty for a year. Number 95, Park Lane, empty. It's been empty for years. Number 99, Park Lane, is a bigger building, empty. Been empty for decades. That house over there on the corner, been empty 25 years. 25 years. And in front of all these buildings, people have been sleeping throughout that period. So don't tell me there's a homelessness problem. It's not true. The homelessness problem is to blame because the government, the landlords and the courts have been structured in a way to serve the interest of landowners rather than people who have needs for housing. Housing is designed to house people. That is a simple, understandable fact. That fact needs to be drummed in to the minds of the population so that they grasp that, understand it and enforce it as national policy, that everybody has the right to a home and that buildings left empty for more than 6 months should be taken over and the doors opened up and people housed in them.
It's just bureaucratic behavior.
There is enough empty property, commercial empty property in London alone, according to a Tory think tank called the Policy Exchange. One sec. There is enough empty commercial property in London alone, according to a Tory think tank called Policy Exchange, website policyexchange.co.uk, to house or to build 420,000 new homes. 420,000 new homes in the empty buildings, commercial buildings in London alone. Don't tell me the housing crisis is not artificially manufactured.
So if you owned one of these properties, would you be happy for it to be taken over
My friend,
by the government?
my friend,
Would you be happy for that to happen?
it is law in this
Would
country.
you be happy for your property
My
to be
friend,
taken
I'm not
over
bothered.
if it was empty?
I'm not
No,
bothered.
but if you owned a property,
The
would
gentleman
you-
here says, would I be happy if I owned a property if it was taken over? My friend, you're saying to me something like this. Just flip your mindset a little
No,
bit. like
I'm
this.
asking you that question.
I am answering your question, but I'm not answering it from the standpoint that you're answering. The answer that you want is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, property owners like to have their property available for their disposal. Of course, that's what property means.
It's a
It means
financial
I have
institution.
something that I can alienate. I choose to do with it as I like, right? That's what property means. But then again, a society is not just a group of individual property owners. It used to be, it's true. For the majority of British history, in fact the majority of period of time when Parliament has existed, property owners were the only people who had the right to vote. And the Tory party and the Liberal Party come to that. They are both parties that were in government before people without property had the right to vote. That's why their views are so fixed around property, because they believe that those with property, and they fought hard with violence. Many people were killed in Britain, even here in Hyde Park, so that we, the people without property, gained the right to cross a piece of paper and say, this is my opinion, I have rights as well. It was only in 1928 1928. Parliament has been in existence since 1247. But only in 1928 did the majority of the British population win the right to vote. Only in 1928. Before that, property owners, then male suffrage was granted, then universal suffrage was granted. But even up until the 1960s, Oxford and Cambridge students had 2 votes. So don't believe the story that property ownership decides. Property ownership is one sectional interest. I believe, and I believe the majority of people in Britain believe, that the rights to housing overrides the right to keep a building empty. Simple as that. If you want to keep a building empty, provide some facilities. Culture, education, community facilities, homeless facilities. Make the asset do something. After all, you are degrading the image of capitalism. If all you do is buy a property and leave it empty, you can't call that progressive capitalism. Capitalism is supposed to be using your money to make things, not parasiting off other people's misery. And that is what it means to say, I've got a property and I've got a right to leave it empty for 30 years. No, you do not. And even according to existing law in Britain, you do not have the right to do that. Councils have the right to mandatorily seize property when it is empty for a prolonged period of time. That is law in Britain now.
How many years?
I'm not sure the time, I think it's 1 or 2 years.
How many properties left empty for 30 years?
Well, there's one across the road just in the corner there. There's another one at 99 Park Lane. As I pointed out to you a few minutes ago, you weren't listening or you weren't here. Okay, I pointed out to you the following. Look it up on the internet. policyexchange.co.uk, a Conservative Party think tank, published a report last year that said in London alone there is enough empty commercial property to provide the space to build 420,000 new homes. So don't tell me there is a commercial property empty in London alone. Sorry?
That's not residential property.
What? I'm sorry, this is a Conservative study, and it said you can build these pieces into housing. And you can use them for housing. I live in such a property myself, and it is used as housing. I live in such a property myself, and it's used as housing. So I'm sorry, but it's a fact. Sorry?
Why is there such enormous demand for property?
Because, an example to you, when Iraq was blown up by the British and the Americans, some people in Iraq with lots of money ran away. Where was the natural place for them to run away from? The place where they had a passport as well, England. Then they buy property in England and they sit on it. It's called land banking. Land banking is one of the purposes of the way in which the Conservative Party organise. They facilitate gangsters and crooks from all over the world to come to Britain, buy empty property and sit on it, just to wait for the property price to rise, and if it doesn't rise, so what? It's more stable than it is in Moscow, more stable than it is in Iraq, more stable than it is in Tripoli, more stable than it is in Cairo, and therefore gangsters and crooks from all over the world flood over here, jack up property prices and exclude all of you from getting housing. Look at the buildings being built at the south of the Thames around Battersea. It is Malaysian companies, Chinese companies, and these properties are sold, purchased and not occupied because it is gangsters and crooks hiding stolen money in Britain and keeping property empty. That is actually what's happening in Britain. And if you open your eyes, if you investigate the data, the statistics, the articles about this, you'll find that's exactly what has been happening.
It's also benefited a lot of homeowners as well.
Of course,
prices have gone up.
Look at George Osborne, right? Who owns the Evening Standard? It is a Russian by the name of Lebedev, right? Lebedev. He ran away from Russia. Okay, they say he's friends with Putin. He ran away with billions of pounds. Where did he get the money?
He was a KGB
Russia,
agent.
until 1991, was one of the most egalitarian societies in the world. These people acquired the money by stealing from the Russian
He was a
population
KGB agent.
and then running away. Yes, good connections he had. And then, who does he employ? George Osborne. George Osborne, straight
Yes,
away,
yes.
man in charge of the newspaper. You put the former Chancellor of the Exchequer in charge of a newspaper circulating millions of newspapers every day across London for
Propaganda.
free. At the same time, we have election expense control. You look at the newspapers all over Britain, run by billionaires. Billionaires personally own the newspapers. And then they circulate anti-Corbyn shit day in, day out. And we're supposed to believe a free and fair election. They've tried to rig it. They've tried to fix it. They've been slandering Jeremy Corbyn for 2 years, day in, day out. But you see, people are not bloody idiots. People are not idiots. They are seeing through the lies. And as they see through the lies, a groundswell of opinion is gathering behind Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. And if you look at what happened at the football stadium yesterday, where Jeremy Corbyn, I think it was the band called the Libertines, they just invited him on the stage. Random audience of young people at a pop concert, cheering like at a football stadium for their favourite football team. That is the atmosphere of support that we can galvanise, we can mobilise to bring about a fundamental transformation in the entire balance of political forces in this country. And it can happen in the next 3 weeks. Let's organise, mobilise, communicate, discuss, friends, family. Ask each of you to do that with one person today, one person tomorrow. The multiplier effect of getting through, cutting through the lies is a powerful force. Once you break through one lie, people's minds open. That is why, first of all, opinion shifted into a polarised fashion. It shifted between Labour and Tory. UKIP vote collapsed. Liberal vote collapsed. It's quite clear this is an election between Labour and Conservative. And Labour stands for the most radical transformation of society since 1945. It is the most radical, democratic and socialist programme we have proposed to the population since 1940. Because can be quite clear, we had some terrible leaders of the Labour Party. But now we have a man who has fought, campaigned on the right side of every single social justice, human rights, anti-war issue and social issue for transformation of society for the benefit of the people for the last 30 years and more since he's been in Parliament. Therefore, I believe if we can get the message out, we can win the election, and we can create a movement that can bring about change in society by participation, by democracy, by taking command over the resources in society and making them subject to democratic control. That is why I've supported Jeremy Corbyn since day one when he stood for leader of the Labour Party. We have the chance, and let's be clear, don't forget, for 2 years, Laura Koonsberg, the television programmes, the radio programmes, the newspapers have been full of articles. The red terrorist, the red communist, the Marxist, the terrorist supporter, the Hamas supporter, all these lies. And then the constant theme was this: Jeremy Corbyn may be popular with the members, but he's not popular in society. Repeated again and again and again like a mantra, so that it dug deep in to the subconscious of the population. But now we see we're ahead of where Ed Miliband was when the election took place last time. We're ahead of where Gordon Brown was in 2010.
Not leading.
Sorry?
Not leading in the polls.
We're not leading in the polls yet, but we're
Because
moving in the right. We've gained 11 points. We've gained 11 points in 3 weeks.
A lot of people are very happy with the status quo.
Sorry?
A lot of people are very happy with the status quo.
What is this thing?
I don't think that's
why-
true. You just said a lot of people are very happy with the status quo.
What is this
I don't
status
think
quo?
so.
Well, we're going to find
I
out.
don't think even the Tories are happy with the status quo.
We'll find out.
Well, if that be the case,
Yeah.
we will continue to fight.
Of course.
We are building not just an electoral machine. We are building a social movement.
Yeah.
A movement to transform society. Transforming society means shifting the balance away from the people that you were talking about, property owners as the primary right, to the people as the primary right, the majority as the primary right, which means democracy out trumps property. That's what we mean. Whereas the alternative is you have someone like Trump with loads of property who buys democracy. That's your alternative.
Yeah.
And we believe in democracy and control by the majority over the resources in society to produce a new type of society. A modern, democratic, socialist society serving the needs of the majority. That's what Labour stands for. That's why I asked you to campaign for them. That's why I asked you to communicate with your friends and family. That's why I asked you to join the Labour Party. Get involved, get active, participate in bringing about change that you need and you want to see. This is the first time in my lifetime that we've had a chance in Britain to genuinely bring about fundamental change. Let's seize that chance and participate, not only for this election, but to bring about, to mobilise that movement, to bring about the power to change society in the interest of the majority. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I just
Can I say one thing?
these individuals like Trump, Clinton, they make the rules.
They what?
They make the rules. What they say, you have to obey, isn't it? This system is wrong. This is very dictatorial. Oh, it is wrong.
They don't
What
control
Trump
everything.
says, you have
If you've got-
Trump is making the rules.
If you've got the weight of support of the population, then you can change that. I believe that had Bernie Sanders been the candidate for the Democrats, he would have won.
Of course he would.
And that reflects the mood of change in society, even in America. Now, if America is prepared to vote for a socialist, why shouldn't Britain? After all, Britain was the foundation of the workers' movement. That's where it came from. The whole worldwide combination of the workers came from Britain. You know, they were very, and I remember reading when people talk about British workers, racist, stupid. And so, let me tell you this: I've been looking back at history, at the newspapers from the 19th century, and in the 1860s, British workers were mobilising across the country to oppose slavery in the United States. In other words, British workers have been progressive, not all of them, but have been progressive when they organise, when they combine, they awaken their consciousness. I'll give you one example. I used to work in a bus garage down the road here. Victoria Bus Garage it used to be. I used to be a bus conductor. And it had every nation, almost every nation in the world working there. And they would sit on separate tables, the Jamaicans there, the Nigerians there, the Colombians there. It was like that, it was all sort of divided. But when and there were some National Front people sort of sitting in the corner attacking people. But then when we mobilised a strike in support of the nurses, suddenly everyone was united together. We can overcome these divisions by bringing out the commonality of interest between people, no matter what religion, no matter what sex, no matter what ethnicity.
How are we going to do it?
Well, it's about mobilising people, it's about combining and organising.
Like you
The
said,
election is
every
one
single
part.
one of us goes and has a
Let's do it.
conversation with one person who lives in another conversation.
Berlusconi of Italy, one of the richest guys, Bill Gates, or rather the Lord, he has linked with the mafia. They were in court.
I mean, you'll be surprised. The British establishment, one of the reasons they get so
The mafia,
hysterical.
they originate from Sicily.
Don't forget this.
That's the
When Jeremy
origin of
Corbyn was elected leader of the Labour Party the first time round, in the first few days after his election, a serving general in the British Army, went to press and said that Jeremy Corbyn might have to be overthrown by the army. That was what he said. That is why they talk this rubbish. They get him on television, they say, will you fire a Trident missile? What a stupid bloody question.
Absolutely.
What a stupid bloody... Will you kill the world's population? Because that's what you must do as
yes
prime
to that
minister. What a
question. You're a
stupid
fucking
idiot.
psychopath. You should be locked
They
up.
are nutcases.
Yeah, it's a parliament.
Well,
It's a ridiculous
you know what I mean?
position
Who
to
would
take.
actually, do you actually understand the consequences of pushing that button?
This
Who
is
would?
a missile.
You know what I mean?
Said
No
yeah.
one would.
Then what do we do?
Well,
It's just
well,
political
my friend,
posturing. That's
my
all
friend.
it is. When the time comes, of course she's not going.
In the last 50 years or
Right?
so,
Yeah, he might, yeah.
people used to be trained in what to do. I've even got a set of posters from Russia and a set of posters from China, what to do when a nuclear bomb flies. And what you don't do is go and fire at someone else and kill them as well. What's the point? What would be the point? What would be the point? When you're dead, someone else is going to be dead as well, so what? Is that good for you? No. So, the main thing is to ensure that doesn't happen. That's all we can do. And I don't know if any of you have seen the film, A Very British Coup. But in A Very British Coup, one of the first things that the Labour Party leader, the left-wing radical Labour Party leader called Perkins, who gets elected, one of the first things he does is he has his policy about nuclear disarmament, but not everyone agrees with him, but he manages to get it through. And then what he does is he carries out on live television the first dismantling of a nuclear weapon. And he begins the process of dismantling nuclear weapons with the objective of dismantling nuclear weapons across the entire planet. That would be a great television show. And that's what they said at the time, and I believe it's correct. However, in the film, they overthrow him by violent force. But I don't believe that will happen in Britain, because we have the strength in numbers in the population. I mean, there was an interesting interview on BBC News this week, and there was one of the reporters going round. He's an Indian guy who was going round interviewing people in a gym. Anybody see that? It was on News at 10, I believe it was. And he went round in a gym, and he went up to this one guy and goes, "Oh, you're a policeman, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah." So immediately you think, oh, he's going to come up with Tory. He says, "What do you think about Jeremy Corbyn's proposal?" He said, "I agree fully. I'm 100% behind it."
Oh, there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of
there
that
is,
out
amongst the police, amongst the army.
Amongst
So,
everyone, because it's
that's
common
right.
sense, a lot of it, right? That's what people want. You know, water and railways and stuff like that should be national property.
All
should
they're
be
trying to
national
do now,
infrastructure.
their game now is to try and make out Jeremy Corbyn,
Can I just say one thing? Picking
because
up on
they
what
want
you were
people
talking
to
about earlier
they
about
imagine that
If you say
people
something
will
enough
some-
time,
the
if you say
media
enough
barrage
time,
against
people
him.
believe it.
That's what they think. But on the other side, I think they've overplayed their hand. It hasn't just been now during the election. It's been for 2
Yeah.
years non-stop. Jeremy Corbyn this, Jeremy Corbyn. Perhaps people are now going to say, "I'm going to watch a video and see who Jeremy Corbyn
He is
really
the only one of the
and
three
then
leaders
they'll
whose
find,
popularity
and then
ratings
they'll
are
find the
actually on the up.
mood will change, the atmosphere will change, and we can
Well,
win a
it's far from
majority.
fairly low
We
effort,
can.
to be fair.
The young people vote.
The young people will vote. There's 2 million people registered. And the other day, 160,000 people registered a single
More
day.
registered now than there were for the last election
Yes.
by the time of polling day.
Even
Yeah.
for Brexit,
Yeah.
more people
And
are
most
registered.
of those, I think, will vote for Corbyn.
So
you know,
we
that
have
we
a
were saying
base of
before
support
about the
to
media
build on
barrage
that.
against him, yeah? One of the main things, as far as I'm concerned, of the media barrage is this attempt to portray him as fuddy-duddy, not leadership, you know what I mean, not going to be a strong and effective leader. And for me,
Weak
you know,
on
this
defence is what they
dictatorial, sort of absolutist type rule that we have come to expect, you know what I mean, is now trying to be portrayed as this is how leaders must be. Whereas from what I understand, I mean, I'm not in the room, you know what I mean, but from what I understand of people that are in the room with him, he is not one to impose his own opinions on a meeting, you know what I mean? He'll sit there, he'll canvass other people's opinions, he'll let others
Jeremy
run the
Corbyn's
meeting
appeal
because he wants,
and
you know
his
what I mean?
style,
He wants to rule by consensus. It's not imposing his own ideas.
Jeremy
on
Corbyn
things.
believes
I think
that
that's
his
real
ideas-
leadership, personally.
I agree. Jeremy Corbyn believes his ideas, the ideas of socialism, the ideas of democracy, can win in society if they are genuinely presented. And the manifesto and the attitudes of people, the opinion polls has proven that. It's what people support.
I agree.